Hey there, I'm Angelo. In this video, let me show you how to create an interactive map using Adobe Animate. In this video, we'll go over how to import an Illustrator file to animate, add motion path animation, as well as set up buttons to open and close pop-up windows. Stick around to the very end and I'll even show you how to add this interactive map to an Adobe InDesign project. So let's jump right into this video and start creating. All right, let's start things off by creating a new document. Now the document that I'm going to be creating will be the same size as the Illustrator file I'll be importing into the Animate document. So I'm going to click Create New. That'll launch the new document window. Let's click the Web tab. And in the width field, let's make it 1280. Hit your tab key, make that 720, the height. Everything else is good. Frame rate 30, platform type HTML5 canvas. Once you have those settings in place, go ahead and click Create. If you'd like full access to the lesson notes and files for this tutorial, you can subscribe to one of my monthly plans. Visit montilladesign.com/plans and choose from one of two plans that gives you exclusive access to tutorial content. I'll leave the link in the description below. Let me quickly jump over to Illustrator and show you the file that we'll import into our Animate document. Here it is. Here's the interactive map. You'll notice in my layers panel here, I have everything on its own layer. All the markers you see here are on their own layer, all the info bits. So the concept here is we're going to click these markers and it'll launch the info pieces for each marker. And then I have some dots here, and this is the path that will have some of the dots moving along. Now, right now you could see it is a blue stroke. And later on, we'll change the opacity to 0, so these will still go on the same stroke path, but you won't be able to see the stroke itself. Another thing to note here is if I just turn this off for a sec, this path, in order for this to work, it has to be 2 points. So if you're going to create a path in Illustrator like such, make sure that you don't join the two. Leave a little bit of space so that when we transfer it over to Animate, this will work properly. Okay, so I'm going to turn that back on and we're done. We can go back to Animate here. Now let's go ahead and import that map to Animate. I'm going to go up to File, Import, and let's choose Import to Stage. Go ahead and choose the Illustrator file. It's called interactivemap.ai. Click Open. The Import to Stage window will appear. What I like to do is click this arrow here to collapse all the layers, and that gives you a better picture of all the layers that I showed you in the Illustrator file. One thing I want to do is uncheck this layer here, motion dots. That's the motion path, but it also has those dots that had Gaussian blur effects applied. If I import it as is, the Gaussian blur effect may not carry over with it. So I'm just going to uncheck that and I'm going to click Import. Now you'll notice it'll import it in the same position from the Illustrator file, so that's helpful. I'm going to click on my timeline here and have a look. All those layers are on separate layers in my timeline. So that's also helpful as we're going to be adding animation to multiple layers in this Animate document. Let's jump back to Illustrator for a sec, and I want to grab the path and the dots with the Gaussian blur. And this is as simple as going to your Layers panel and clicking the indicator here on that entire layer that collects everything, it selects everything, and then just do Command or Control C on Windows and go back to your Animate file, edit, and let's paste in place. Now we want to paste using AI file importer preferences, that's fine, and click OK. And you can see now our path is in, as well as the dots with the Gaussian blur effect still applied. Now you'll notice in the Layers panel, that's at the very top now, motion dots. Let's drag, click and drag, and make it the second last in the stack, in the layer stack. So it should be main content at the very end, followed by motion dots. Let's set up the motion path animation next. So I'm going to start by clicking on this first dot in the bottom, right click and choose Convert to Symbol. I want to call this motion dot 1 and ensure that the type is set to movie clip in this case, and click OK. Next, I want to click on the path and I want to copy it. So Command C, we're going to need this path when we set up the motion path animation. So I'm going to click on that first dot again. And then if you double click, you can actually drive into its own timeline. So next, let's right click and let's choose Create Motion Tween. Now this sets up a 1 second tween, which is fine for now. But what I want to do is click and drag. You can hold Shift when you do this, and I'm just going to drag and place it on the other side of the path, like that. And you can see it sets up a straight motion path, which we're going to replace now. So if I click that, and remember I copied the motion path previously, Command V to paste it, and there it is. So you're just going to have to position it and match it to the current path. And do the best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can actually zoom in if you want and just match it up the best you can. And that's good. And you'll notice that when I did that, it actually placed the dot at the beginning of this point. Now this path motion tween here is set at 1 second, which if I play this, watch how fast it's gonna go. So obviously we don't want it to go that fast. We want it to go at a slow and smooth pace. So I'm just going to click and drag the right side of this all the way to, let's make it 20 seconds. So if I drag it to 20 seconds and then release, and now if I play that, you can see that that plays at a nicer pace than 1 second. If you want it to go slower, just extend that timeline even further. So 30 seconds, 35 seconds, something like that, okay? So if you want to exit out, just click this arrow here and it'll take you back to the main scene. So if I zoom out again, now we want to do the same thing to the second dot. So let's right click that and convert that to a symbol. And this will be called motion dot 2. Again, it will be a movie clip. I'm going to click OK. Now we have to copy this frame again, this path one more time. So Command C, click on that dot, double click to drive into that timeline, right click, create motion tween. And again, we could just drag this one to the left side. And it creates that straight motion path, which we're going to replace by clicking it and then Command V to paste our custom path in. And I'm just going to drag it over and then you'll just have to match it up again. Now this path won't be visible, so it doesn't really matter if you match it up completely. It'll still follow the same path regardless. And what I want to do is extend this so it's 20 seconds long. So I'll leave it at 20 seconds there and you can see it'll play. Now this will also go in the same direction, but I don't want it to. So I'm going to click the path and right click, go to motion path and let's reverse path. So now both of our dots will go in opposite directions, which is what I want in this case, okay? So once you're done that, I can pause it and go back. Those won't be visible in the main scene anymore, but they are still there. I'm also going to click on the path again, and in the properties panel under the object tab, go to the stroke. You can see to the right of it, there's a stroke alpha. Let's go ahead and decrease that to 0. So we no longer see the path itself. Remember, even though you don't see the dots, they're still included in the animation. And to test that, you could click on this icon up above, Test Movie. That will launch the project in a browser and have a look. The dots are moving along the path, only we changed the opacity of the stroke to 0. And you can see that's operating and working as we set it up. So let's go back to Animate, and next we'll focus on creating the interactive buttons to the markers as well as the info pieces that correspond with them. In order to set up the button structures in this interactive map, we're going to have to convert the content to symbols as well. So I'm going to right click San Francisco, the info bit here, and let's convert that to a symbol and try to remain consistent with your naming conventions, because when you set up the buttons later on using the actions panel, it'll be that much easier. So I'm just going to say San Francisco or San Fran info. Okay. Now that's the name of the symbol, and the movie clip type is just fine as well. The other thing to note here is under registration, Let's have that set to the middle anchor point there, right in the middle, okay? That'll be important when we're setting up the animation as well. So I'm gonna click OK, and you can see now that is a symbol. So if I double click, much like I did before with the blue dots, this takes me into its own separate timeline. Now I can right click this and create a classic tween. And in this case, I wanna add 2 more keyframes to the sequence. So I'm gonna drag my playhead to the 15 frame mark and press F6 to insert another keyframe. You can also click this here to insert a keyframe. I'm gonna drag the playhead to the 1 second mark, click there, and F6 to insert another keyframe. Now I wanna add an animation here where it zooms in and then zooms back out. So I'm gonna put my playhead at the first frame, and for this we'll need the transform window, and to access that, go to Window and Transform. I already have mine open here and it's docked on the right side. And basically what I wanna do is change the scale width and the height to 0. So I'm gonna press 0, and you can see if I move the playhead here, it zooms in, and we're gonna repeat the same step for the last frame at the 1 second mark. Click there, and in the transform window, change the width to 0, and it also changes, just make sure that this is constrained. And now we have this animation where it zooms in and out. So if I press return to play it, you can see it's just in a loop. But basically we're gonna add a stop action, and this is important when we're setting up the button structure, okay? Another thing I like to do here is add an effect, an ease in, out. So go to the properties panel, and then under the frame tab, click where it says classic ease, click that, and you have some options here. I like to choose ease in, out, and in this case, I wanna choose quint. So I'm just going to double click to apply that, and have a look now. It almost snaps and then goes back. It just looks a little bit cleaner, and that'll look nicer when we set up the button. We're not done here yet though. We have to add another layer on top of this to add our stop actions. So I'm gonna click this plus icon to add a new layer, and I'm gonna name this layer Actions. I'm gonna drag the playhead to the first frame, make sure you're on the Actions layer, and I'm gonna go up to Window, Actions. And here's mine, I already have mine open as well. So in this case, I wanna add using wizard. Click that. And I'm gonna add a stop action at the beginning because I don't want this to play at the beginning. So I'm gonna click stop, this timeline, and then next. The triggering event is with this frame, and then click finish and add. You know that the action has been applied because you'll see a little A above the frame where you applied it to. We have to add one more stop action here, so I'm gonna drag the playhead to the 15 frame mark, click that empty frame and press F6 to insert a keyframe. And again, do the same thing, add using wizard, add a stop action there with this timeline, click next, and the triggering event is with this frame. Click that, finish and add. Now it just adds some code there that you don't really have to worry about. As long as you follow those steps and you see those 2 little A's above those frames, then you know you've applied those stop actions. Now this has been set up, so I'm gonna go back to the main scene. And again, you'll notice that it's not visible anymore because we added the stop action, so it's not there, and that's okay. Once we play this and test it, we'll be able to see that content again. Next, I'm gonna click on the San Francisco marker, right click, and convert that to a symbol as well. This will be called trigger 1. By the way, when you're setting up all the markers, call them trigger 1, trigger 2, trigger 3, and so on. It's just gonna make the process of setting up those actions much easier as well. So the type here will be button, and I'm gonna click OK. Next, I'll double click the button, and again, it's going to take me into its own timeline here. See down below? We have 4 states here, up, over, down, and hit. We'll focus on over because we're gonna set up a hover appearance states here. And so I'm gonna click that and press F6 to insert another keyframe. And basically you're just gonna change the appearance of this. So for instance, I'm gonna make it white. I'm gonna go to my swatches and I'm gonna make this white. So we have the regular appearance and then the hover state, okay? And then I'm gonna click back to go back to scene 1. Now, before we add the actions, there's another step that's very important, and that's adding the instance names. So we'll need to add an instance name to the buttons, or in this case, the triggers, as well as the info bits. So you can see I set up the button here, and it's called trigger 1. That's the name of the symbol, but we have to give this a instance name as well. So you can call it trigger _1 just to keep things simple, okay? And what I'll do is I'll click on the San Francisco info. You can see there it is. If I go to my object tab, San Fran info, and I'll just name this SF_info. And you can see now I have San Fran info as the symbol name and SF info as the instance name. And I'll show you why this matters because we're going to set up the interactivity here. First, I'm gonna go back to my timeline here, and I'm gonna scroll up to the very top. I'm gonna create another layer, and I'm gonna call this actions. Now, it's very important that any action you're adding to this interactive map should be done on this layer. So any button interactivity, this will be done on the actions layer. So let's set up the first one. I'm gonna go to add using wizard. And remember, we've already set up the stop action individually on the info piece. So now I want to set up a play action, and I want to play SF info. So go ahead and click next. And how do I want this triggering event to be? Well, I want it to be on mouse click. And what is the object I want to click to trigger that? Trigger 1. Finish and add. So there, the code is all set, and that button has been set up as well. So we can test that out. I'm gonna press the play button here to test the movie. Once again, that'll launch in my web browser, and you can see the rollover state appearance is working, and I can click to open, and then click to close, click to open, click to close. I'm gonna go back to animate, and I'm gonna let you set up the rest of the buttons. I'm gonna do that now, and then I'll show you how to publish this online, and also save it out to place it in an InDesign document, which is really cool. Now that all the buttons have been named and set up, it's time to add the actions. So remember, click on the actions layer and we'll add all the actions using this layer. So we've already set up the first one. Let's keep going. Add using wizard. We want a play action. And you see I've named all the actual info pieces. So the second one is New York. We want to play that. Next, on mouse click, using trigger 2. Click finish and add, click add using wizard again, and we want another play action, and we want SP_info for Sao Paulo, and then click next, on mouse click, and this is trigger 3. Finish and add. Add using wizard, click play action. The next one is Milan. So Milan info, next, on mouse click, using trigger 4. Finish and add. Add using wizard, another play action. The next one is Johannesburg, and then click next. This will be on mouse click, much like the others. This is trigger 5. Click finish and add. We have one more, add using wizard, play action. We want to play Mumbai info, and then click next. We want the triggering event to be on mouse click, and that is trigger 6. Finish and add. Here are all the actions in this window here. I'm just going to minimize that, and we could give this one last test to make sure that everything is operating as we set it up. Nothing is showing, and that's okay, but look at all the hover appearances work. I'm gonna click New York, click Sao Paulo, click Johannesburg, click Milan, Mumbai, and of course that first one. And these are all reversible, right? So you can click those markers again to reverse that as well. So I'm gonna go back to Animate, and let me show you now how to save this out and publish it for HTML. To publish the project as HTML, go up to File, and then Publish Settings. You want to ensure that this is checked on JavaScript/HTML, and then choose the folder where you want to save this to. I'll click that, and I've already created one called Interactive Map Final. Go ahead and click Save, and then Publish. Once you do that, you could see that it'll package the images in the project, the HTML, as well as the JavaScript. Another helpful way of publishing this is creating an OAM package and placing it in an InDesign file. So I'm going to click OAM package, and I'm also going to save it to the same folder, and I'll publish that as well. Now, if I open an InDesign document, I've left some space up here to add the interactive map that I just published as an OAM file. So I can go up to File and Place and locate that file. Here it is, interactive map final.oam, and I'm going to click Open. And much like anything else that you place in an InDesign file, here it is in my loaded cursor. So I'll start in the upper left. I'll hold Shift when I'm dragging out, and I want to snap it to this guide that I've placed there, and then release. And there is the interactive map. Let's go ahead and test it out. I'll open any of my interactive windows here and click the EPUB preview window and have a look. I can click through those, and this is how you can add that interactive map into an InDesign document. How cool is that?
Thank you so much for watching and following along in this video. Leave a like or comment below if you found this video helpful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date with all my latest content. If you'd like to learn more about Adobe Animate, check out this playlist right up here. Until next time, take care and keep creating.